I have another international story time. This one coming out of New Zealand by way of South Africa and India. So this is kind of all over the place, and it's going to give me the opportunity to kind of nerd out with some history. Now, some of this history, some people know. I get it. Some of us don't know. American history barely teaches us correct American history, let alone world history. So I want to get into it a little. As for this woman, I'm going to give some of her background and then I'm going to bring it to the present with the story time that she gave. But some of the background is important because you need to understand how the foundation is laid so you can understand where some of this misogyny goes, or I'm sorry, where it comes from. Okay, so this woman says, I'm a 40-year-old South African Indian woman who has been living in New Zealand over half of my life, but was born and grew up in South Africa under apartheid. That tweet, which was doing the rounds about hating your girlfriend, was started by a South African man. Misogyny is rampant in my home country across all races. People can be old fashioned. However, misogyny is everywhere, even in New Zealand. In apartheid South Africa, Black people were barred from working in higher jobs because of systemic racism. It was barbaric. As to my background, my ancestors were brought from India to South Africa in the early to mid 1800s to work as indentured laborers on the sugarcane fields. The British East India Trading Company would ship Indians to places like South Africa, Fiji, and the Caribbean to work on the farms. I am fifth generation South African, so part of the diaspora. So while while the British didn't technically have slaves on the British soil, they had so many colonies that they were able to just rename slavery because they were so interested, or they had such a need for sugar, and they were just as brutal as American enslavers, and they were about that business. And so they were trading in people, pum pums, alcohol, and sugar to get. They formed the sugar triangle for slavery, and so a lot of colonies came out of the British situation like that because of sugar and their power. British colonies were all over the place, and they were basically just picking up people and putting them in other places, and it was basically slavery by another name. Okay, so she continues, we don't really know our full heritage because the records from the ship were lost. My granddad tried to do a family tree, but did not complete it before he passed. Some aunts and uncles have taken over his work. South Africa is very racially diverse. There are all kinds of people there. There are many different tribes of Black people. Then you had the white colonizers from England and the Dutch and the Portuguese, then Indians, and then even the Malays who came from Indonesia. Colonization really jacked up people's cultures. It really jacked up people's countries because of picking people up and just moving them around simply for the sake of, mining people for their resources, their energy, and just using people. Like I said, this is kind of a history lesson, but it's very important and it's interesting to know how colonization has impacted different countries and different cultures. She says, my family historically were very impoverished. Somehow my father managed to start a business in South Africa and used the money to bring us to New Zealand. He started working at the age of 6 in the 1950s. For some reason, in the 1990s, it was easy for South Africans to immigrate to New Zealand. I think the immigration law was easier back then. Also, from way back when, our family is quite racially mixed. Some cousins look more Black, some look more white. Back in the olden days, the British soldiers would also SA women on the ship and ended up with mixed babies. So, all this history. Okay, so she currently lives in New Zealand, and that brings us to the story time of right now. Okay, so she says, also with regards to partners, my thing is that I am incredibly focused with regards to art. I get carried away and can paint for days on end or work on projects. I have been with men in the past who expect you to care for them, do all the housework, wash their clothes, and cook for them. They could not understand I need hours just to do art. This would breed resentment in them. And I have always been open about being someone who needs lots of hours to do my thing. I come from a culture and time period where women pursuing their passions and careers was seen as gross, and our jobs were to serve those around us to the detriment of our well being. The reason why I did the history lesson and the culture lesson is because that is pretty much the global situation of women serving those to the detriment of our well being. That's global. And in some instances, they tried to take over. Dudes who were never into art before and dated me started to take art classes, ask me for art advice, try to do videos, start their own art business while trying to learn how to draw for the first time ever, and then tried to skinwalk me. So, this is like that video that I did where the woman was into horticulture, and then all of a sudden her husband was, and then he created a business based on her ideas. That's the reason why this woman inboxed. She goes on to say, I do not date at all these days. Last dude who talked to me flat out told me, I want some of your magic to rub off onto me. Teach me. So these people, and I've said this before, they are miniature colonizers. They're looking to take women's time, energy, creativity, intellect, all that. They're just looking to suck it out and take it for themselves because they don't have their own. They have to colonize women. She says, ladies in heterosexual relationships, please protect your peace and energy. People will try to tame you. There is a reason why there are so few women artists in history, and the big names are men. The men had people running their lives for them. The women artists are expected to be servants on top of their art career. In focusing on healing and hangups this year, I have been forced to dismantle the patriarchy as part of that. And it is something I never knew had such a huge impact on my life and culture. Colonization and patriarchy go hand in hand. They're basically trying to mine resources off of people. They're simply looking to take the creativity of other people, and they have done a bang up job globally. So, this particular woman saw these men trying to siphon off her energy and her creativity and intellect, and she wasn't going for it. Something else that she says about New Zealand culture, she says, I have to say that New Zealand culture is very traditional across races. It's all about the moms staying home and the dads go to work from a very young age. This goes across all cultures, whether it's white people, Maori people, or islanders. If you are a woman who is single and child free, it is seen as weird. I had to chat to my younger male Kiwi friend the other day, and he concurs with this expectation that society places on familial roles. We had a woman prime minister over the pandemic, and she did a fantastic job. But a lot of people berated her and were mean despite the fact that she single handedly prevented COVID from decimating the country, basically because she was a woman. It is very interesting that so many women have these similar stories about patriarchy, how they're pushing away from these traditional boxes, how they're watching the dismantling of patriarchy right before their eyes. This woman is around my same age, so she and I have both seen many things, and it is wonderful for it to come to a head while we're still old enough to recognize it and appreciate how things are changing. You guys go ahead, jump in the comments. Let me know what you think about all this. I know, like I said, I was giving a lot of history, a lot of foundation, but it is so crucial to understand history a little bit so that you can understand culture. So jump in the comments. Let me know what you think. Like, comment, share.